You can even see it on the faces of people like Christian apologist latest golden boy, Wes Huff, who smiles when he says people deserve to go to hell. Because suffering in hell for eternity simply isn't enough. People need to suffer in this life too. Hello and welcome to Noah's Snark, the podcast to put on blast if you have evangelical Christian neighbors. I'm your host, Atheist Josephina, aka AJV. Let's get down to business. I was listening to one of Christy Burke's latest YouTube videos, aka Jezebel Vibes, and she brought up something I hadn't thought about in a while. Coming from an evangelical Christian background, she talked about how often Christian leaders or politicians in the US view suffering as something noble, something righteous, as if suffering here on earth and your mortal life will all be justified in the afterlife, that suffering might be God's will, and why should they interfere with God's will by creating or supporting policies that would alleviate suffering? Mind you, their views never apply to themselves, to these Christian leaders. Why should they suffer when taxpayers can give them free health care while they support legislation that slashes Medicaid and Medicare for the neediest people? Somehow, you never see them signing up for suffering, do you? Anyway, I heard a long time ago, and I forget who said it, but they said something to the effect of, in order to sell you a religion like Christianity, assuming you didn't grow up in the religion, they first have to convince you that you're broken or that your life is full of sorrow and suffering. I don't know if you've paid enough attention to the stories of people's religious conversions, but from what I've gathered by listening to hundreds of conversion stories, it's extremely rare that anyone converts to something like Christianity when their life's in order, when they're already happy. If a person is suffering, though, there's always going to be that con man there to say, hey, I've got a religion for you that's going to solve all your problems. Naturally, they don't disclose the fine print that reads, by the way, all your problems will never be solved, and that's why you'll always need the religion, because religion is not there to solve your problems, it's there to sell you the hope that it will solve your problems. If you're suffering, they stand a better chance of converting you, or at least maintaining control over you. The monotheistic religions, or even Buddhism, can only convert people based on the premise that life is suffering, and we're often told only their particular religion solves the problem. Why their particular religion? Power and money would be two reasons. Now, of course, I've had scores of proselytizers tell me they're not doing it for the money. There are plenty of examples of underprivileged preachers and churches, obviously, although I'd argue they're not doing it in a way that would make them money. I'm not going to give the secret away, but if I were unscrupulous, I bet I could make a shitload of money pretending to be an apologist and grifting Christians. Are they trying to exercise or manifest Nietzsche's will to power, though? And by that I mean our fundamental drive to increase our power and influence. That seems likely. That's just human nature. Whether by honest or nefarious means, we all love bringing people around to our way of thinking because we're arrogant little tribal monkey assholes, and people like to believe if something works for them, it must work for everyone else, so they're going to try to force it on everyone else if they can. That's the unfortunate arrogance of the human psyche. That's really why poor preachers preach, not because Jesus told them to spread the word, but because of how powerful or how good it makes them feel. Getting someone to follow you on social media or in real life gives you that dose of dopamine you crave so badly. We all crave it, I crave it, but at least I'm not going to bullshit you and tell you I don't. Do Christians want people, specifically non-believers or those who don't share their particular brand of faith, do they want those people to suffer as a form of punishment for their non-belief? I feel that manifestation of Nietzsche's will to power coming on again. If Christians can cast themselves in the light of being privileged, and outsiders as being cast as villains who want to take that privilege away, yeah, those Christians are going to want their enemies to suffer, despite what Jesus might have said in the Bible in deference to any cruelty aimed against you. Again, that's just human nature. I have little doubt that America's Christian conservatives genuinely believe that certain groups, for example, people on welfare, immigrants, or the LGBTQ communities, are undermining what they see as the moral underpinnings of society, and as such, those people must be cast as villains in their little cosmic play about good and evil. I would add that many of these Christians are also coming from a mindset in which they believe in the value of individual responsibility, never mind that they often like to place the blame for something like rape on women, of valuing their own traditional social order over all others. Again, their social order works for them, so it must work for everyone, despite the obvious flaws in any such system, and allegedly championing small government so they can limit programs that help people who are not amongst their in-group while spending more money on the military whose purpose it is to kill people and militarizing the police to intimidate citizens. But I'm digressing a little bit. Let me circle back to the introduction and ask the primary question. Is suffering noble? Secondly, does suffering serve a divine purpose? To answer the first question, it depends on what you mean by suffering. As we grow from children into adults, I would assert that some suffering, short-term bouts of pain or high stress really, is necessary for becoming physically and mentally resilient. Short-term stress in the form of things like exercise or intermittent fasting are also good for our bodies. Those activities actually promote not only longevity but vitality in our senior years. But how long that suffering, so to speak, lasts makes a big difference. Neither your body nor your mind can withstand being under stress constantly all day, every day. In short, it spikes our stress hormone levels, which spikes our blood sugar, which disposes us to illnesses like heart disease and diabetes. Being under stress all of the time, if we can call that suffering, does lead to diseases and does shorten your life. The numerous studies done on this have clearly demonstrated the link. To answer the second question, does suffering serve a divine purpose? I would say that if I were Christian or Muslim, I'd have to say yes in order to avoid thinking the God presented in the Bible were a monster. Yes, suffering would have to serve a divine purpose, or at least be the consequence of free will. Note here that the free will defense is a theodicy, a defense against why there is evil and suffering, a defense which has yet to explain why we can't have free will without the suffering caused by other people. After all, God didn't have to create the circumstances in which free will led to people suffering from another's defiance of God's laws. The way I see it, the free will defense is a complete cop-out explanation for why suffering and evil exists, although maybe that really is the best way God could have set things up in order for some people to be saved and reap the reward of heaven. And that's why I'm fond of saying God's plan sucks. People say with a straight face, this is the best way a wise and omnipotent God could have done things, when I can think of a better way of doing things with my own little wee brain. Still, since we can't know everything, it's possible suffering fulfills some divine purpose we're just not aware of. And if that's the case, we should suspend judgment on the matter until we can be more certain, until we have more evidence, or are able to reason why this way and not another. But since I don't believe in a supernatural agent, I can't see any divine purpose for suffering. Whatever God's intended goal is in allowing all the suffering that has ever happened, well, if this God did exist, they're an asshole, especially if they actually are omnipotent. So, do some Christians want people to suffer? Yes. You can even see it on the faces of people like Christian apologist's latest golden boy, Wes Huff, who smiles when he says people deserve to go to hell. Because suffering in hell for eternity simply isn't enough. People need to suffer in this life too. Now, certainly not all Christians want other people to suffer. Just the ones who are assholes like their God do. And that has less to do with religion and more to do with human nature. Religion simply provides the justification for their hatred. And that's a problem because I would assert that believing in fewer false ideas, if indeed something like theism is false, believing in fewer false ideas provides us with fewer smokescreens to excuse our behavior. Without that smokescreen of excuses, maybe we'll be more likely to take a moment to examine why we do what we do. Better outcomes tend to follow stopping to think for a moment about what the fuck you're doing. In a general sense, I don't see how eliminating excuses for our behavior would be a bad thing. But you can correct me if you think I'm wrong. Thank you for listening. If you like this kind of content, please consider subscribing. For Noah's Snark, I'm Atheist Josephina. Until next time, let the evidence guide you and wonder inspire you.